Hey guys, it's Jen. Welcome back. So today's video is highly requested. I've been meaning to do it for quite some time now, but Colourpop just won't stop with the releases. So every time I feel like, I need to wait until I get something in the mail or whatever. But at this point, I'm just going with it. I'm just going to have to do these maybe like every 6 months or something as things change. But I wanted to show you my palette collection. But a few of you had also mentioned that you'd like to see what other Colourpop products I have, like the blushes and lipsticks and things like that. So if you'd like to see a video on those as well, I can definitely do a part 2 to this, so let me know down below. But anyway, I'm going to be going through my entire collection, even the discontinued ones. I didn't do that last time I made this video, and a lot of you guys said you wanted to see the discontinued ones, so I'm throwing those in there as well. So anyway, this video is going to be really long, so I'm just going to go ahead and jump right in. So first, let's take a look at the discontinued palettes that I have, and I'm not going to swatch these just because if you already own them, you know what they look like. If you don't own them, they're not available for purchase anymore, and I would hate to show you a palette and show you swatches and have you fall in love with it only to not be able to buy it. That's super frustrating, but I will be swatching the ones that you still can buy. So first, let's start with Element of Surprise. This is definitely one of their earlier palettes that they came out with pretty shortly after Yes Please, I think, if I remember right. I'm not 100% sure. You guys could correct me on that one. But this one was mainly a neutral palette with just 2 pops of color. You had this hot pink shade, and then you also had this sort of bluish purple duochrome shade. And if I remember correctly also, I think that this one had a couple shades in it that were not eye safe. And I remember thinking that was strange. It was the first time Colourpop did that, and a lot of people were really upset about that. So that's mostly what I remember about this palette. I haven't touched it in a long time, but when it first came out, I really did like it a lot. Next up, we have the My Little Pony palette, and this one I remember really surprising me. I thought at first that it was kind of like more of a colorful palette, and back when this came out, I wasn't dipping my toes into the water as far as color yet, but once I tried it, I actually really enjoyed it because I felt like the colors were very subtle and easy to wear, at least for somebody who normally likes neutrals. So I'm kind of sad that this one was discontinued too. I thought it was a really pretty spring palette. The next 2 were, I think, Ulta Exclusives, and they're no longer available either. The first one is Sweet Nothings. This one I really, really loved. I thought it had these beautiful, like kind of cooler toned rosy shades in here, these pinks and rose golds. You have this purple. You also had like this cool plummy matte shade and this cool, really deep brown. You had a matte ivory. I just thought this was a really pretty palette, especially for my skin tone, the fact that I like wearing cool tones as well. I'm actually really bummed that they don't make this one anymore. And then Rendezvous was like the sister palette to that one that came out right around the same time. This one had more jewel tones in it, definitely a brighter palette overall. And you're actually going to see this one a little bit later on in the video as well because it looks very similar to 3 other palettes that they came out with later down the road. And I did do a comparison of all 4, so I want to show you what that looks like once I get to that point in the video. Because if you did miss out on this one, there are others that look very much like it. And then next we have Take Me Home. This one was a little 6-pan mini palette that was available at Sephora, I believe, back when Colourpop was there. I totally forgot until I was digging out all these old palettes that Colourpop had even been sold at Sephora at one point. I want to say it was like a couple of holiday seasons ago, and then it disappeared, and then it popped up at Ulta. So this one was just a really cute little easy to travel with neutral palette. Next is You Had Me at Hello. This was one of my favorite palettes from Colourpop. It was so beautiful, like just again those rosy tones that I naturally gravitate towards. It's very neutral, very easy for a neutral lover to wear, but yet something different than just brown. So that's one reason I really loved it. And I actually do have swatches of this one that I can put up because I had just done a comparison between this one and the new X's and O's palette. So I still have those swatches on file. I hadn't deleted them, so I can go ahead and just insert those so you can see what it looked like. It's a shame because, like I said, it is such a gorgeous palette. But if you want to see how this stacks up to that new X's and O's palette, which is available, I will link that video down in the description box if you want to check that out. And then next we have Golden State of Mind. This one was also a Sephora exclusive back during that holiday season. I think it was 2 years ago now. And this one was not my favorite just because it was all shimmer shades. And the formula honestly didn't feel as good as a lot of their other palettes. I used this one a handful of times and then put it away. It was just annoying to use because I had to always dip into another palette to get a matte shade. And the next one, this actually surprised me when I went to the website that it's not there anymore. This is I Think I Love You. Sorry, these are like so dirty, but the shadows got really crumbly. So this one was another really pretty neutral palette. It just had this pop of shimmery yellow in it, but the rest was just really warm neutral browns. So this was one that I got quite a bit of use out of when I first got it. And admittedly, I haven't played with this one in a while, but I'm thinking I should take it back out again because I think it would be great for this time of year. Oh my gosh, one of my favorite palettes from Colourpop of all time is the All I See Is Magic palette. This was a holiday release at least 2 years ago, possibly 3. I'll have to double check, but this one was so stunning. I wore this one like crazy when it first came out. This is another example of a colorful palette that's very muted and very understated. I loved this green shade right here all over the lid. It was so beautiful. I also loved like these plummy purple shades, that pink. There's like an olivey green, a gold, even this rosy kind of coppery shade was just so stunning. I keep hoping that every holiday season they're going to re-release it, but it never happens, sadly. I just love this one so much. And then this last one really shocked me as not being available anymore. This is the Fortune palette, and it launched along with the Fame palette. That one's a cooler toned one. This one was a little bit more warm toned, and I want to say these came out in the spring of 2018, so they're not even that old. I was really surprised that it's not available. The Fame palette is no longer on Colourpop's website, but you can still get it at Ulta. So I don't know if they just maybe have limited quantities and they sold out of this one first, or if they're still continuing to make the Fame palette and just decided this one wasn't as popular. But this one was definitely a solid warm tone palette, especially because you got 16 shades in here instead of the usual 12. So you had a few more options, and it kind of had a little bit of everything. You had neutrals, you had like some rosier tones on this side, you had the orange, the yellow, a gold champagne color up here. So it kind of had a little bit of everything in terms of a warm tone palette. But I definitely took this one on a lot of trips with me because I could wear every single shade in here, and I just felt like there was a lot of nice variety. Next, I have a few Ulta exclusives to share with you. The first one is X's and O's, and as I mentioned, I did do a video on this one comparing it to some of Colourpop's other palettes, so I'll leave that linked in the description box in case you want to check that out. But this one's more just like a burgundy palette. It did remind me a lot of You Had Me at Hello, also the She palette, and Give It To Me Straight. I compared it to those three in that video, but I'll go ahead and just show you swatches really quick. It's just a really pretty rosy tone palette. To me, this one almost seemed like more of a Valentine's Day release than a fall release, so it was kind of confusing when it first came out, but I do think it is a really pretty palette. Next up, we have the Truly Madly Deeply palette. This is another Ulta exclusive, and as you can see, I haven't even swatched it yet. I just got this one really recently, so I can't wait to try this out because these are my colors again. I love these cooler tones. I love the rosy shades in here, so it just looks like a gorgeous palette. The only thing I'm not crazy about are these glitter shades right here because I generally don't wear glitters, so those are a waste for me. But this is one of the larger 16 shade palettes, so I'm going to go ahead and just insert some swatches here. And I think the shades in here are just beautiful and soft. If you have more of like a fair to light skin tone, I think it would be so gorgeous. And then the last palette available at Ulta is the Fame palette. This is the sister one to the Fortune palette that I just mentioned a few minutes ago. And this is the cooler tone version, and I just love this one to death. I hope they don't discontinue it. I hope it stays at Ulta for a while because honestly, there's not a lot of palettes like this around. Usually when you see a cool tone palette, it's more of like a smoky palette, like with the grays and the blacks and the blues and all that. But this one has all these pretty like cool tone browns and taupes. And you have this one that's almost like a grayish green that's really unique. You have this purple one down here and this rosy shade. This palette really doesn't look like much, and even when you look at the swatches, it's kind of like meh, like it's not super interesting. But when you go to put it on your eyes, again, especially if you have a lighter skin tone, these shades are just so easy to work with. They're not going to be overpowering on lighter skin tones. So I just think despite looking kind of boring, this one is one that I've gotten so much use out of. So next, let's talk about some of their larger 15 and 16 pan palettes. So the first one is Chasing Rainbows. This one honestly has not gotten much use at all from me just because it's not really my vibe. I bought it because I collect Colourpop palettes and I've purchased most of them now, but this is one of the reasons why I've slowed down, because when I go back and look at this palette, I just think, you know what? I didn't need to buy this because I don't wear these bright colors very often. So more recently, I've been a lot more selective about what I purchase and just making sure that I'm going to buy ones that I would actually wear. But if you're into those bright colors, I think this one's really beautiful. You have a nice mix in here. You have a couple of neutral shades, but you also have the purples, the pink, the coral shade. You have some turquoise blues, the bright pop of yellow. So it has a little bit of everything in here. It's a really pretty palette. And then next we have the two Disney designer ones. We have It's a Princess Thing and Misunderstood Villains. And the Princess one is one of my favorite Colourpop palettes just because, again, it has that softer color scheme. You guys are probably going to start to see a theme here. I love, again, these rosier shades. I love the neutrals. I like that it's not just a brown palette. You do have a little bit of color variety, but it's not super bright. And then the Misunderstood palette was one of my least favorite palettes of all of them, just because it's full of shimmer shades for the most part. You only have a couple of mattes, this white, these two right here, this deep blue, and then the black. And as far as transition colors go, you really only have this one. So there wasn't a lot of, I feel like, options, and I'm not one to put shimmer in my crease. I know you can, I just don't prefer to do that. So I like to have more matte options for crease colors, and this one just didn't have that for me. Overall, I do think some of the colors in here were really pretty and unique, but not enough to get me using it very often. And then I also have two different 16 pan palettes. So the first one is the Shayla collab called Perception. And this one actually is very, very similar to Urban Decay's Born to Run. I did a dupe video a while back and I showed comparison swatches, so go ahead and put that up. They're not exact dupes, but I always felt like they had a really similar color story. So this is a great option if you didn't want to spend the money on the Urban Decay, just because Colourpop's formula is really so great. And then the last one is Through My Eyes, and this is another one that I felt was very similar to the Rendezvous palette that I mentioned a few minutes ago. There was this one, Rendezvous, and then two others that are really, really similar. So once I get to those, I'll go ahead and show you all four of them side by side. But as you can see, just from looking at the Rendezvous palette before, very, very similar pops of color in here and just those really pretty jewel tones, except you have more shades in this one. This is another one I feel like I should start using again just because it didn't get a lot of use. And now that I'm a little bit more comfortable wearing color, I feel like I should give this one another shot. It does have a few bright pops of color, but it also does have some muted colors as well as neutrals. All right, so next let's talk about these little 9-pan palettes. I don't have a lot of these just because they kind of went the monochromatic route, and I'm not into just like an all purple palette or an all pink palette. I did buy one of them, but then after that I decided they don't get enough use for me to, warrant buying them. So, they have the honey one, there's a lavender, a green, a blue. They have so many different ones now at this point, and I really haven't purchased any of them. The most recent one I got was the Baby Got Peach. This is another one that I got so recently, I haven't had a chance to swatch it yet. I just thought this was such a soft and pretty palette that would look really nice against my skin tone. And when it comes to warm tones, I definitely prefer peachy shades to like the deeper reds and oranges because I think they just go with my skin tone a lot better. And then the next two palettes were also sister palettes that came out around the same time, Soul and Mar. So Soul is more of a warm tone palette. You have those really rich coppery and orangey shades. You have this bright red shimmer in here as well. It also has a couple of neutrals in here. You have this bright matte coral shade. So this one was a really fun summer palette, but all of the shades were a little bit dark for me, so I didn't get a lot of use out of it. And out of the two, I would say Mar was probably my favorite and the one that I wore more often just because it had those really beautiful blues that are great for the summertime. And this brown here was a perfect crease color that actually went with every shade, so I really liked that about it. As always, the formula was really good on it as well. I just really didn't use this one very much outside of the summer that I initially got it. And then the next one was Ooh La La. I think this one was the one that kicked off their more monochromatic type thing that they're doing. And there's a bunch that came out after this one that looked similar, so I didn't buy it. Like there was a watermelon one, I think a strawberry one, and they were all some sort of variation of pink tones. And I bought this one when I was still buying every single release, but it just got, like I said, it just got so crazy that I stopped doing that. And this one I wore a couple times. I remember wearing it in a video and I liked the look that I did, but it was sort of a one-trick pony for me. I felt like most of the looks I tried with this came out the same, and I'm not a huge fan of wearing pink eyeshadow because I think sometimes it can make me look like I'm sick. So this is one that I'll probably end up decluttering because I really don't use it. And then the last one is the Brown Sugar palette, and if you couldn't guess just by looking at it, this is my favorite of all the 9-pan palettes. It's really neutral. A lot of people might think it's boring, but I just love the combination of colors in here. I love these brown shades, and I absolutely loved these two shades right here because they're colorful yet subtle at the same time. This is just a really pretty warm crease color. I'll go ahead and show you swatches just so you can see it all laid out. But another thing I just really loved about this palette is how light the tones were and how easy they are to wear for more fair to light skin tones. So this one is definitely a favorite. All right, so next up we have the 12 pan palettes that are still available currently on Colourpop's website. A few of them are also available at Ulta, so in the description box below I'll link to both places. That way if you're planning to purchase, you have a choice, because some of these are actually sold out on the Colourpop site at the moment. I'm not sure why, but if they are, you could always check Ulta and they might be there as well. So first up we have the Yes Please palette. This was the first pressed powder eyeshadow palette that Colourpop ever did, and it was very, very similar at the time. A lot of people were making comparisons to the Natasha Denona Sunset palette. It's really, really similar. So I just happen to have the Sunset palette, so I'll just show you quickly. This one does have more shades in it, but the shades that the Colourpop one does have look to be pretty much identical. So I'll actually go ahead and just show you swatches of these two side by side so you can see how they compare. And even though Natasha Denona has an awesome formula, so does Colourpop. So, I mean, for the price difference, I think it's totally worth it to just go with the Colourpop. Next up we have the She palette, and this one was never one of my favorites, even though it does have those really pretty rosy tones that I like. A lot of it is shimmer shades, and a lot of them are really, really light. I like when palettes have a lot of mid-tones and then maybe just a few light shades and then a few deeper shades. This one just has so many light shades and also has a lot of shimmers, so it just wasn't my favorite. For whatever reason, I just never really got into it. Next up we have Double Entendre. This one came in the same packaging as I Think I Love You, so I always used to get them mixed up. It was hard to tell the difference between them. But this one doesn't have that bright yellow shimmer like I Think I Love You has. I do like this one more. So I'm happy that if they were going to discontinue one of them, that it was that one, because I do like this one a lot more. They're both neutral palettes, but I think this one is almost like a little bit more neutral. That one was more like a warm neutral. In here you do have a few warm shades, but I think for the most part it's very, very neutral and brown. So if you're looking for just like a really basic neutral palette that's full of brown shades, this one is really, really awesome. And then Give It To Me Straight is another one that I really enjoy. I've used this one so much. I really love all the berry tones that it has. It also has just these rosier neutrals. It's just a really pretty palette. It has a pretty good balance of warm and cool shades in here. You have like these cooler plummy purpley shades. This brown right here is a nice cool tone. And then you have some warmer shades as well, like this matte terracotta, these browns over here. So it's a nice mix. It also has a really even mix of matte and shimmer shades, which I like as well. You have some great transition colors in here, quite a few of them actually. You have a brown, you have this peachy one, and then you also have this more dusty pink one as well. So you can create a big variety of looks with this palette, which is something that I definitely look for. Next up, we have two palettes that I felt were really similar to each other, Salvaje and Dream Street. These are also very similar to the Rendezvous and Through My Eyes palette that I mentioned earlier. So now we're at that point in the video where I can show you them all swatched side by side. But first I'll just show you the insides of the palette. So here's Salvaje. This one I think looks a lot like the Rendezvous palette that was the Ulta exclusive. So there's a quick look at that one. And then Dream Street I would say is the one that's least like all the others, but you still have like those pops of turquoise in here and some of those warmer tone neutrals. So I'll go ahead and just put up the photo of all four of them together so you can compare. And as I mentioned, I think Dream Street is a little bit different than the others, but the other ones are almost like spot on dupes for each other. It's kind of crazy that I own all of these palettes and they're all so similar, but Colourpop just gets ya. I don't know. Next up, we have the Kathleen Lights Zodiac palette. And as you can see, I have never swatched this before. I've owned this for quite a while. I got it with the intention of doing a video on it. I never ended up doing one, and then I just put it away and I've never pulled it out since. But I'm gonna go ahead and swatch it now, and then I'll insert footage so that you can see what all the colors look like. This was another one of those palettes that I bought just to kind of complete my collection, which I regret doing because even though it's pretty, to me it just seems a little bit disjointed. It's hard for me to figure out what color combinations I would want to make with this one. Individually, I think a lot of the colors are really beautiful. It's just that I have a hard time visualizing how to put them together into looks. So this is one that I feel like maybe I should try to take out and play with a little bit because it feels like such a waste to buy it and then never use it. Next we have Good Sport. You guys know how I feel about this one if you've been following me for a while. I've featured it in so many videos recently. It's just the perfect fall palette. It's so unique and so different. I love all the mix of colors in here. It's just those beautiful, rich fall tones, and you have so many different options, which again, I love options and different types of looks versus ones that are kind of all the same color. So in here, you have some yellows, you have some greens, like these three down here that make a beautiful look. You have these orangey colors. This shade Rookie right here, I have to swatch for you because it is so gorgeous. It's coppery, but it has like these flecks of blue glitter in it. It's so beautiful, such a unique color. You have purples. It's really just such a unique and interesting palette. So I'm really a big fan of this one. And then next up we have the Sweet Talk palette. This one I want to say came out in the spring of this year if I'm not mistaken, but let me know down below if I'm wrong. This one had a really pretty coral theme. It was perfect for spring. It does have 2 pressed glitters, also 1 Super Shock shadow, which I kind of always wondered if these dry out over time, so let's try it. I mean, yeah, it kind of just goes on a little bit like streaky and glittery now. It's not as creamy as it once was. It feels a little bit more like it's almost turning to powder, but it could definitely still be used as a topper on top of other shades. And this one I liked, but I remember feeling like the looks that I created with it came out all kind of very similar. I really wish that they had added some pressed powder shimmers instead of the glitters, because you really only have this shade for the lid and this shade for the lid if you're not going to use a glitter, or if you're going to do an all matte look, obviously you could use other ones. But I usually like to use shimmers on my lid, and I really only have this one and this one. So all the looks I kept creating with this one were either corally, like I would use one of these shades here with the coral on the lid, or they were kind of like this peachy brown color on the lid with these browns in the crease, and that was kind of it. So I do like the colors in this one. I think it's beautiful for springtime, but it just wasn't really something that I reached for all that much. And then the last one is California Love. This one came out over the summer, so it's one of their newer ones. This is another one I really enjoy a lot. Again, you do have 1 pressed glitter here, which I'm not a big fan of, but at least it's only 1. And the rest of the palette is those warmer neutrally browns, but you also have these coppery and rusty colors, which I really like. They were a nice addition to it. This shade here too was also really beautiful. And I love how many crease colors you get in here. You get this kind of cooler taupey one. You have this warmer light peachy brown right here. And then you have this mustardy yellow, which actually pairs really well with some of these shimmers for the lid as well. You also have 3 different deeper shades. At least they're deeper for my skin tone. If you're darker than me, they might be more like a mid-tone for you. You have a matte ivory. You have quite a few different shimmers. So I really do like the variety that you get in this palette too. I feel like you can make a lot of different looks with it. Next, I have 2 larger palettes. This one is the Here Comes the Sun palette. This is one that they put together with a whole bunch of their singles. It's 24 pan palette. It is still on the website, but it's currently sold out. And since it was a summer release, I'm not sure that they're going to be bringing it back. I always kind of figured it was a limited edition. But you can still go to the website. I'll link it down below if you want to see just what these shades are in case you want to try to recreate it with some of the singles. I'm not sure if all these singles are actually available now, but I do want to show you a comparison that I did between this one and the Profusion Mirage palette. That one's $13. And it's almost identical if you look at the swatches side by side, and it's way cheaper at $13 versus $40 for the Colourpop one. I do like Colourpop's formula maybe slightly more than Profusion, but I think Profusion makes an amazing palette for 13 bucks. I also want to show you this one quickly next to the Natasha Denona Sunrise palette, because this is also a very, very close dupe to that one. It has a lot of additional shades in it, but if you do own the Sunrise palette already, then you probably have these shades in your collection anyway. And then we have the So Jaded palette, which was another Kathleen Lights collab. I did a whole video on this one with some looks, so I'll link that down below or above if you want to go ahead and check that out. This is one of, if not the largest palette that Colourpop's ever done. You have 30 shades in here. 2 of them are pressed glitters, 1 Super Shock shadow as well. This one still feels pretty creamy. And there is such a nice variety in here. I feel like the looks you can create with this palette are endless. So I've really enjoyed playing with this palette. It is a little bit overwhelming, but I just have to force myself to really like sit down and think about what I want to create with it. So it's not one that I grab if I'm looking to just run right out the door quickly, but if I have some time, it's just a really fun, interesting, unique palette. Next up, I have some custom palettes that I made with their BYOP. I have some smaller ones. This is the larger one that I made, which is another 24 pan palette. And I just love the colors in here. It was funny because I made a few palettes in the past, and one day I just went through and added a whole bunch of singles thinking I just want to put them all in one palette because I wanted to get some singles that I didn't have before. I wasn't really trying to make a cohesive color story or trying to make a palette. And after I added them all in, I looked at it and I thought, you know what, this actually looks like a nice palette. Like, I would buy this. So it was very random, but it kind of worked out. This one is one of my favorite shades in the palette. Wait until you see how crazy this one is. It's called On a Whimsy. And it's the most intense silver ever. Like, look at that. It is so beautiful. Oh my gosh, I love that shade so much. So I'll go ahead and show you swatches. So on one side, I'll just show you swatches so you can really see the color. And then on the other side, I'll show you swatches with the names added. So if you want to freeze the video and write down any of the shades that you're thinking about purchasing, then you can go ahead and do that. It would take too long for me to like turn over every shade and read them to you. So I just figured this picture might be a little bit easier. And then this one I made really recently. I just showed this in a video last week talking about new fall products and kind of 90s throwback vibe. I just wanted to make a burgundy palette and I really love how this came out. So again, I'll just go ahead and put up a picture showing all the different shades that I used in this palette in case you're curious or any of them catch your eye. I tried to include a good mix of matte and shimmer shades, and I think the majority of the shades in here are cool tone, but there are a few warmer shades as well. And then the next palette I made is kind of a green palette, and it's funny because I've been talking about in the video how I don't really like their monochromatic ones, and then I went ahead and made two of them, a burgundy palette and a green one. But with these, I really tried to include a little bit of variety. With this, I really just wanted to add some green eyeshadows to my collection. I wasn't sure that I would necessarily use this palette just on its own, but that I would pick it up if I was looking for a really nice green shadow. But I did add a brown crease color, also this yellowy one, and then a bright pop of color there. And then I have some more kind of turquoisey greens and then some more olive greens. So I tried to balance it out a little bit as much as I could. And then the last one I made is just more of a neutral brown palette. I was out to create my perfect neutral palette that had everything that I would want as far as brown shades. So I did a whole video on this one as well. I'll link that again below in case you want to check that out. But I added a lot of matte shades to this palette. You have warmer mattes down here. You have some cooler tone mattes as well. You have 4 different shimmer shades for the lid, a matte ivory. I tried to include a lot of transition colors in here. So like I did with the other custom palettes, I'll go ahead and put up swatches and also a photo with the names of each shade in here in case you want to go ahead and pause the video and check them out. All right, guys, I feel like that was really overwhelming and you're probably wondering which ones are my favorites. So here is my top 10 right here. A few of them are discontinued. All I See Is Magic, Sweet Nothings, and You Had Me at Hello are all favorites that unfortunately you can't get anymore. The other favorites, Good Sport, definitely such a unique palette. Double Entendre, great neutral palette. California Love, same thing. It's awesome for neutrals. I love the rosy tones and Give It To Me Straight and just the variety that you get in there. Fame is an awesome cool tone palette. The Disney designer one is just beautiful. It's just those really pretty soft shades that I love. And then same thing with Brown Sugar, again, really soft neutrals. So probably not the most interesting collection of palettes to some people, but if I'm being completely honest, these are just the ones that I reach for the most often out of all the other palettes that I have. So I hope this video helped you guys out a little bit. If it did, definitely give it a thumbs up. Also, please let me know down below what your favorite Colourpop palettes are. I would love to hear your thoughts on all of these. Thank you so much for watching. Please take a minute to subscribe to my channel. Also, let me know if you'd like to see a part 2 with blushes and lip products, and I will definitely do that as well. Thanks, guys. I'll see you next time. Bye.